far cry from the days of digitalis, aspirin, nitroglycerin, and morphine. According to the World Health Organization, only 50% of patients in developed countries, that's countries like us, actually follow treatment recommendations. And in 2006, it turns out that prescription errors injure at least 1.5 million patients a year at a cost of approximately $3.5 billion. An analysis of 200,000 electronic prescriptions found that 20% of all of these prescriptions don't actually even get filled. The reasons that people give for not filling prescriptions are cost, desire to try alternative treatments, fear of side effects, inconvenience and complexity of dosing regimen, and patient doubt about needing medication in the first place. Denial is not just a river in regions. According to CDC, well, these are just some other facts. The most one I wanted to point out was that 40% of older people use 5 or more prescription medications in the last month, and that basically the use of prescription drugs has just been going up dramatically, even in just the past 10 years. This is just a list of the top 10 most prescribed drugs in 2010. It's pretty scary, but hydrocodone, 131 million prescriptions, probably half of them are coming out of one pharmacy in California. So, as looking as a physician, this is how we have a very distinguished panel here tonight of people that I believe are at the forefront of solving a lot of these major issues. First, we need to reduce prescription errors, increase compliance, reduce drug-seeking behavior and prescription drug abuse, better monitor side effects, custom-tailored drugs to the individual. It's no longer one-size-fits-all, because obviously those aren't optimal in a lot of cases. Better manage polypharmacy and drug-drug interactions, reining in prescription drug costs while still promoting new drug development, and further develop evidence-based prescription models using as much level 1 evidence as possible to randomize clinical trials. Unfortunately, these are expensive, and there's not a whole lot in it for the drug companies who are the people who have the money to do this. And finally, we need to address problems with expired and counterfeit drugs, drug disposal, and accidental poisonings. And if anyone wants to develop new antibiotics, that would be really awesome as well. So I'll hand it over to Eva now. Let's see here.
All right, thank you. So you're going to be my clicker out here. Okay. So Louis gave us a physician's perspective over here, and we have a panel that represents a variety of different perspectives, but none of them actually represent the patient's perspective as much directly, or they're not coming from there. So I thought I'd just start off with a very brief overview of what it looks like, or what it's looked like for the patient. And I wanted to just sort of take us back in time and kind of ramp up to Pharma 2.0. So real quickly, when I was a child, you went to the doctor's office and you took a bottle. There was something called a dispensary. I grew up in rural India. And you went to the dispensary with a prescription, which was written on a piece of paper, and you brought your own bottle from home. And the dispenser would look at the bottle and judge the cross-sectional area, and had a bunch of paper tape with little notches on it. And he would pick the right kind of tape and tape it onto this bottle. And he'd fill in whatever the liquid prescription was in it. He would compound it right there. He was called a compounder. That's what he was called. And he would put it in, and then he told you take 1 notch, 3 times a day. So that's how it really worked. So just as in this picture, you didn't have these high-tech tools, but you had the prescription, you had the actual compounding recipe, and you put it all together. Then we got to a few standardized ingredients, a few other tools, and the pharmacists started to, put things together, and maybe they experimented a bit on the side, we didn't know. Then we have standard drugs, pre-formulated, and a series of them sitting out there on the shelf, and you pick them. And in terms of the kind of interaction with the patient, basically the pharmacist came up to you at the time of dispensing, and if you wanted advice, he or she might give you some advice. So it was an as-needed advice on as-needed basis, and it was essentially formulary drugs of some kind, of pre-formulated drugs, more or less. Then they started to take it on the phone. That was the first step up. And then we're starting to ramp up. And now you can dial in from home and figure out what's going on with your prescription. And now we're about to launch into the modern era, and the panelists here are going to tell us about it. So I thought I would follow the supply chain over here. Let me start with Scarlett. I'll have you have a presentation here? Okay, great. So let's start with Scarlett's presentation. Scarlett is from UCSF, and they have a robotic pharmacy here. And it sounds terribly exciting here. I saw a news release about a year ago on this. Yeah. So take it away.
Is this on? Try. I talk loud. Can you guys hear me in the back? Okay, good.
Yep.
No, it's okay. I'm the Assistant Director for Pharmacy Operations at Mission Bay. I actually designed and built the robotic pharmacy that we have. We do, from our pharmacy, we do inpatient dispensing. We don't do any outpatient dispensing, so I can't really speak to that. I know about it, but I can't speak to it very readily here tonight. By bringing in the robotic equipment, this first picture, these first few are our IV robot. So once the robot is trained, there's a lot of work that goes into it. You calibrate everything, you test everything out as far as density and size of the vials. I can't even go through all of it, it'll take too long. Then you train it in the robot. Once it's trained in the robot, it will always be made exactly the same. If you ask me to make something, today I make it this way, tomorrow I make it that way. Not that there's anything wrong going left to right or right to left, but I might forget. And if I haven't made it for a year, I'm going to have to look it up to know how to make it again. She never forgets. And they're girls, by the way, because when they decide not to work, they don't do anything. They're very smart. I'm going to go to the next slide. Okay. We also, this is a semi-automated piece of equipment. We had this specially designed. I worked with the company that actually developed this for us. It will draw oral syringes, which is something that is not in the industry right now. We have to make a lot of oral syringes because we have pediatric patients, so we have to make dose-specific size syringes. And someone sitting here all day long doing this gets very tiresome. This machine will do it for us. It will just actually draw the syringe. It's very nice. Next slide. This system is two pieces. The very back, big long white box, looks like a semi-truck without wheels on it. It's an inventory system. It has all the drugs stored within boxes, and it brings it to you based on barcoding or asking for a specific product. It eliminates the ability for the technician to accidentally grab the wrong product because they're just pulling out of bins or putting stuff away. It also controls everything by lot number and expiration date. So I don't know how many of you are aware of all the recalled products we have been getting lately, but we can not only go in and retrieve the recalled product out of the system very readily, once we put that lot number in, we can never put it back in the system. So a few years back, there was a huge recall on heparin. A lot of hospitals ended up having heparin in their facility that was recalled, not because they didn't take it out, but because the wholesaler accidentally sent it out, and it got put back on the shelf, because as a human, I can't remember that 20-digit number when I bring the product in, so it got put back on the shelf. The robot will remember it. I put that lot number in, it'll block me from putting it back in the system. This equipment right here, this is a packager. It not only packages, all of our unit does tablets, capsules, oral syringes, suppositories, injectables, vials, everything that we would want, we can put it in here. It loads it in, it knows the expiration dates, lot numbers, all that. And then when our patient's orders come through, it automatically picks the products to go for the patient based on the time of day in generic order and lists it for the nurse to be able to administer. Everything's barcode scanned in and out. Patient meds are barcode at the time of administration. Since we've installed this piece of equipment, picking errors are a problem, always have been. Wrong doses get picked for patients all the time. We have not had this machine pick one thing wrong in over 3 million doses. You can't say that when a human's doing it. You just can't. I probably took up too much time, but
That's
It gives you kind of an overview, and we can talk more when you ask questions. I think they want to do everybody in the panel first, and then do a panel question.
Okay, yes, so let me just clarify that. We'll have each of the panelists present for a few minutes, and then 5 to 7 minutes each, and then I have a few questions for them, and then we'll take it to the audience after that.
Who's next?
Okay, so the next is, yes, Rashan. Rashan is here.
He's
Mine.
that one.
So we're following the supply chain, sort of.
So just
Yeah,
take
go.
it. So my name is Rashan Sorley.
I apologize, I did not introduce you, yes. So,
No, that's fine.
Rashan's CEO of a very exciting company, Needle, that just came out of one of the incubators in New York that's trying to pretend to be Silicon Valley. And,
I grew up in San Francisco, so I have a lot of love for San Francisco. I can tell you that New York is very interesting for healthcare because of the density of pharma and some of the digital players that are out there. But I'm out here pitching Hippocrates and various health company platforms, as well as pitching venture capitalists. So get this right, I recently graduated from an accelerator in New York. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the accelerator model. 12 weeks, $20,000, approximately 6% of your company, and connections to the top people in your vertical. My program is called Blueprint. We're affiliated with Techstars. So Techstars found that they were rejecting a lot of healthcare companies because they couldn't add value. They're one of the most established tech accelerators. Blueprint came along, created a model under the Techstars umbrella. There's at least one mentor in the audience, Dr. Adam Schlifke from Kaiser, who made at least one trip to New York to mentor those of us that were in the inaugural class of Blueprint. So I'm out here pitching. I like to jokingly refer to myself as a recovering drug rep. I worked for Johnson & Johnson for 7 years, and I learned all the tricks of the trade. I started in 2004, and I left in late 2010. They sent me to North Dakota to sell birth control. Trust me, as a young black recent college graduate, that was quite odd. I sold antibiotics, so I understand the need for new antibiotics. I sold Levaquin and other antibiotics. I sold narcotics. I sold a couple of devices for J&J. But what I observed occur between 2004 and 2010 was 2 shifts. The first shift was healthcare professionals were rapidly adopting digital tools to seek out answers to their questions, whereas in the past, they would have called charming guys like me to tell them their answers. And the second trend was that healthcare institutions were shutting the doors to guys like me. So there was a day I could show up in the ICU, I could wander the halls at any time of the day, I could take people out to golf and to dinner and to Hawaii. I did it all, right? Hunting cabins in North Dakota. Trust me, introducing this guy to like hunting, it was intense. The preparation was the funniest. Me at the shooting range with my buddies. At any rate, I did whatever it took to sell. But noticing those 2 trends, it's like, how can I continue to be effective? I work for a multi-billion-dollar drug company. We have tons of intellectual capital. We have tons of resources in the form of intellectual capital, financial capital. How can we provide value to clinicians that are seeking answers in new ways and that are shutting the doors to us? Well, before I could start to solve the problem, I just had to continue to chase my quota. And when things got really bad, I got super creative. And when basically all of my accounts had a policy where I had to get badged and credentialed, and I had to wear a badge that would turn red after 2 hours because my appointments had expired. So I got creative, and I volunteered as an orderly at 3 of those top accounts at night. Yes, in the emergency room, wheeling patients. I got to know my customers. I got to read what was on the bulletin boards. I understood the outcomes measures that you guys were seeking, and I won. I continued my sales trajectory. But there was a point where that felt icky. Like, what am I doing wearing a volunteer smock 3 nights a week? When do I get to have a life, first of all? Second of all, this is just not what I signed up for. So I left Johnson & Johnson in 2010 and founded Needle. The first, you can click. this is geared towards investors primarily. I didn't really come with slides for this, but basically, the first iteration of Needle, which Dr. Schlipke is probably, that's what he's familiar with because he came out to New York in January, was how do we break down the walls of a hospital or a clinic and enable a healthcare provider to connect with someone in pharma? So I went back to one of my former customers and I said, if we build this private collaboration environment where you can ask questions anonymously, and vendors, and through push notification, we can push your needs, your questions out to industry, would you engage with industry in that way? And the provider said, yeah, like, if it were 100% pull, and it was my needs and our unique patient care objectives, sure we would deal with industry, but what we hate is this constant emails and the bait and switch and the surprise guests and the pushy managers, and they don't like all that. So we launched that, and it worked really well at one hospital. I got into the Blueprint Accelerator and rapidly realized that that model wasn't scalable. Every single hospital was going to take 9 to 12 months to decide to implement our tool. But what was really interesting that we learned out of our first implementation was that 3 out of 4 questions that healthcare professionals ask can't be answered by sales reps. They need to be routed to medical affairs liaisons, clinical affairs liaisons, health economics researchers, clinical research associates. We're talking your peers in pharma, folks that you went to medical school with, pharmacy school with, who took a different path and joined pharmaceutical companies. They are the ones that are qualified to answer your unique questions. So for me, even though we thought that we were solving the problem with the tool, we realized, wait a second, technology offers more than just breaking down the walls. Technology offers clinicians the ability to connect with the brightest minds in pharma and to get all of your expert questions answered to the best of the company's ability with some expert, one of your peers in pharma, not a guy like me